The human heart carries a question that never fades. Who are we truly? Neither the titles we receive nor the roles we play seem to account for this enigma. It is like walking down a road where each step changes the scenery, yet the feeling of incompleteness remains. Since childhood, we learn to define ourselves through achievements, functions, memories. However, the more we try to hold on to these definitions, the more we realize they slip through our fingers like sand. What is revealed is that identity is not something fixed, but a living field of energy, constantly in motion. Quantum science already shows us that everything we call matter is, at its core, organized vibration. Likewise, ancient spirituality has always pointed out that the human essence is not exhausted in flesh, but pulses in an invisible dimension. The meeting of these two views suggests that the spiritual being is not an addition or ornament to ordinary life. It is the very root of the experience. You can feel this in the instant silence opens within you. It is not just mental rest, but a kind of calling, a reminder that something greater than time sustains you. When this presence begins to be recognized, every external search is transformed. The question is no longer who should I become, but what has always been vibrating in me since the beginning. And it is from this point that the real begins to draw near, not as a distant promise, but as the essence already breathing within you. With every breath, more is happening than the simple movement of air entering and leaving the lungs. This biological gesture, so ordinary, is also proof that the body is traversed by something invisible that sustains life. To inhale is to receive the world. To exhale is to give yourself back to it. In this rhythm, what we call I already shows itself as relation, as a meeting point between what pulses within and what vibrates without. Contemporary physics reveals that nothing is truly isolated. Each atom is connected by subtle fields with the space around it. What we consider solid is, in fact, a dance of particles, sustained by forces unseen, yet determining the movement of everything. In the same way, the spiritual being is not a decorative layer of existence, but the very invisible fabric sustaining each gesture, each thought, each emotion. The mistake lies in believing we are only the surface, only the social role, or the accumulated memory, as if the wave could forget the ocean. Yet on closer look, it becomes evident that what we call personal identity is but a momentary expression of something much vaster. The spiritual essence is not limited to a biography. It manifests through it, like light passing through stained glass, taking on different colors, but still remaining light. From this perspective, experiences of loss or profound transformation reveal themselves as invitations. Each time a piece of who we thought we were falls apart, something greater shows itself. It is not annihilation, but an opening. What seemed like an ending is, in truth, a chance for recognition. It is in these intervals of life that it becomes possible to feel we are not merely a personal story, but a consciousness, experiencing stories. Spiritual traditions have always intuited this. Mystics spoke of an eternal spark. Philosophers described an incorruptible soul. Indigenous sages called it the spirit of the earth walking within each being. Behind the differences in language, what remains is the same perception. There is something that precedes any identity and endures beyond any change. However, recognizing this dimension is not an automatic task. It requires a kind of attention that is more delicate, almost artisanal. It is not about building new definitions, but about learning to feel the silent space that sustains every experience. In this space, the spiritual being does not appear as a figure or image, but as an intensity of presence. It is the invisible field that witnesses, without being reduced to what it witnesses. Think of the moment when you gaze at the night sky. What impresses you is not only the beauty of the stars, but the strangeness of realizing that the human gaze can reach immeasurable distances. This capacity to perceive the infinite is a sign of the essence itself. The body is limited, but the consciousness that opens before the cosmos seems to have no boundaries. This shows that within the human being there exists a dimension already participating in the eternal. Contemporary neuroscience suggests something similar. States of deep meditation modify brain activity in such a way that the usual patterns of identity dissolve, allowing the individual to feel part of something greater. It is not hallucination, but reorganization. The brain learns to align itself with a broader field of perception. The spiritual, in this sense, is not an escape from reality, but an expanded way of living it. By recognizing this foundation, it becomes clear that the spiritual being does not need to be built nor conquered. It is already present, silently sustaining every gesture. What is missing is only the clarity to perceive it. Like water that remains invisible until light makes it shimmer, the essence only needs to be illuminated by conscious attention. And it is here that the journey begins to take on another color. For until now, you may have believed you needed to accumulate experiences or follow a long path to become someone more complete. But what if completeness was already within you, waiting only to be recognized? This question opens an abyss, but also a luminous possibility, to live not as a needy seeker, but as an already whole presence, learning only to remember. If the spiritual essence is already present, the challenge is not to reach it, but to learn to recognize its subtle signs. For this, we need images that help us feel the invisible, since the rational mind feeds on forms and narratives. One such image is that of underground fire. Think of a dormant volcano. On the surface, everything seems solid and stable, but beneath lies an incandescent core, always active, always ready to overflow. Spiritual life resembles this fire. Even in days of apparent banality, it continues vibrating like an inner heat sustaining the outer landscape. This fire does not burn to destroy, but to reveal. It illuminates from within the structures we once thought rigid. Situations that once seemed definitive begin to dissolve under its clarity. It is as if reality itself were made of a fabric more flexible than we imagined. Suddenly, what was a prison reveals itself as passage. What was a limit transforms into invitation. The spiritual being does not break ordinary life, but makes it malleable like clay in invisible hands. The science of matter also helps us understand this malleability. The study of quantum fields shows that particles only assume a definite form at the moment of observation. Until then, they remain in a state of possibility. Something similar happens with us. Before fixing an identity, we are vastness of potentials. Each thought, each choice, each gesture is the moment when essence condenses into form. But behind form, the field of infinite possibilities continues to exist. This knowledge can be translated into practice. Close your eyes for a moment and bring attention to the space of the chest. Do not seek ready-made images, do not force symbols. Simply notice that there is a pulsing center, a field of warmth or vibration that does not depend on your will. It is like a silent bonfire always burning, even on days when you do not perceive it. If you remain attentive, you will feel from it a movement of expansion, as if each cell in the body remembered an ancient song that never stopped playing. This experience, brief as it may be, is enough to show that essence is not an abstract idea. It is tangible, almost palpable, and can be felt in the body. And each time this perception ignites, the relationship with the external world changes. People cease to be mere fixed characters and become dynamic reflections of that same presence. Even challenges are transformed. Instead of enemies, they reveal themselves as messengers, testing the intensity of the flame. Ancestral metaphors speak of underground rivers that nourish entire forests without ever being seen. This image helps us understand how spiritual life works in silence, nourishing decisions, encounters, and turns that shape our destiny. Most gestures we call intuition are fruits of this invisible source. It is not about predicting the future, but about sensing the deep currents already moving the present. It is possible to train this sensitive gaze in simple situations. As you walk down the street, pay attention to the interval between one step and another. There is a moment when the body floats, neither fully on the ground nor fully in the air. This suspended instant reveals that each human movement contains a breach for mystery. If in this small space it is already possible to feel the infinite, what then of an entire life? The spiritual essence is precisely this constant opening, this point where ordinary experience reveals itself as a window to the eternal. By embracing such images, you begin to realize it is not necessary to wait for great events to feel the spiritual dimension. It is already manifesting in the most discreet gestures, in the gaze that rests on something with tenderness, in the silence that settles between two words, in the moment when breathing finds a serene rhythm. These small signs are doors to the perception of what has always been there, the true essence of being. This realization changes the very meaning of the search. For until now, perhaps you believed you had to climb a mountain or follow a long discipline to touch the sacred. But what if the mountain was already within you, sustaining every thought, every heartbeat? The underground fire does not need to be brought from outside. It only awaits you to come close enough to feel its warmth. Up to this point, we have spoken of essence as hidden presence, as underground fire that sustains life. But it is here that a necessary rupture arises. What if everything you believed to be your spirituality was only a superficial reflection, a delicate mask built to make you feel safe? Many grow accustomed to thinking that spirituality is a set of practices, symbols, rituals, or beliefs. It is comforting to believe that belonging to a path, following certain words, or repeating formulas is enough to touch the mystery. But that comfort can also be an invisible prison. Because the instant spirituality is reduced to something external, it becomes just another identity, another role, and not the living experience of essence. The true turning point happens when we realize there is nothing to add to what we already are. On the contrary, it is necessary to let the layers we have accumulated fall away. What you call your spiritual self may be nothing more than a sophisticated character, fed by beautiful phrases and ritualized gestures. But what if essence needs no ornamentation at all? What if it reveals itself precisely in the emptiness of certainties? This paradox unsettles. Until now, you believed you needed to seek more knowledge, more practices, more answers to draw closer to the spiritual. But what if the excess of seeking is exactly what covers the presence already vibrating within you? The mind seeks complexity, but the spirit reveals itself in the radical simplicity of simply being. It is like looking at the surface of a lake. The reflection of trees, clouds, and light creates beautiful images, but always unstable ones. Only when the water becomes still is it possible to see beyond, to perceive the silent depth that was hidden. The same happens within us. The more the mind stirs to define the spiritual, the less it perceives the depth. When finally the urge to define ceases, essence shows itself with a clarity that no word can describe. This rupture is not merely theoretical. It can manifest in unexpected situations. A person who always believed themselves strong because of titles or rigid discipline may, in a moment of fragility, discover a completely new strength. Not the kind that comes from effort, but the one that arises from the simple fact of existing. Spiritual essence is not conquered by hardness, but revealed through openness. And it is precisely here that the most powerful contradiction arises. Authentic spirituality is not accumulation, it is unlearning. It is not about adding elements, but letting go of what was never essential. What remains when everything transient falls away is the real being. It needs no justification, no proof. It simply radiates. If this idea provokes discomfort, it is a sign it has already begun to act. For discomfort is the natural reaction of the ego when faced with something that threatens its centrality. Spiritual essence, on the other hand, does not struggle for space. It does not compete. It simply is. And the more you try to grasp it, the more it escapes. Only in the moment you give up control does it reveal itself in fullness. At this point, the journey ceases to be a search and becomes recognition. What once seemed distant reveals itself as intimate. What once seemed complicated shows itself as simple. It is the turning point where everything changes, without anything needing to be added. And here I want to invite you to a different experience. If this movement of rupture made sense to you, like this video to mark this moment of turning, and in the comments write the phrase, "I let go of the layers and recognize the essence." This writing is not just interaction, it is also a symbolic gesture, a declaration to yourself that you are ready to let go of the excess and allow the real to be revealed. After the rupture, the need arises to give body to this understanding. The mind may comprehend, but the heart asks for images that make it feel. And this is why every tradition has always resorted to stories. They do not merely teach, they resonate as mirrors of the inner journey itself. It is told that in a distant village lived a craftsman known for transforming raw stones into sculptures of rare delicacy. His secret was not in the strength of his arm or in the precision of his tools, but in something no one could explain. They said he would spend entire days sitting before a block of rock, motionless, until suddenly he would begin to work. And each strike revealed forms that seemed already hidden within the stone. One day a young apprentice asked, "Master, how do you manage to see statues in blocks that to us look like nothing more than shapeless mass?" The craftsman smiled and replied, "I invent nothing. I only remove the excess that hides what has always been there." This narrative, simple and ancestral, contains the key to spiritual essence. What the craftsman does with the stone is what life invites us to do with ourselves. Remove the excess. The true work is not created from the outside in, but revealed when the original form is allowed to come to light. How many times do we try to add layers to appear stronger, wiser, more spiritual? And how many times do those layers only distance us from something more intimate and true? The apprentice looks at the stone and sees hardness. The master looks at the same stone and sees promise. What differs is not the material itself, but the quality of the gaze. Modern science can help translate this story into contemporary terms. DNA, for example, contains within its nucleus information capable of manifesting almost infinite potentials. Yet only part of this potential is expressed in each organism. What defines the manifestation is not the absence of information, but the conditions that allow certain genes to be activated. In the same way, the spiritual being already contains within itself all possibilities. What is lacking is not content, but space for that content to emerge. Returning to the craftsman, we can understand that each chisel strike is comparable to the moments in life that strip us down. A loss, a sudden change, a crisis may at first seem destructive, but seen another way, it is only the excess being removed. What once seemed hard and formless begins to reveal hidden delicacies. Pain, in this context, becomes sculpting. This reading changes the way we see challenges themselves. Instead of interpreting each difficulty as punishment, we begin to recognize it as the patient gesture of the great sculptor of existence. It is not about glorifying suffering, but about understanding that even it can be a tool of revelation. The spiritual does not take us away from life's stones, but teaches us to perceive that within them pulses a secret form, waiting to be freed. And perhaps this is why stories echo deeper than concepts. The apprentice before the master is none other than us, burdened with questions, searching for formulas, believing spirituality must be invented. The craftsman, in turn, is essence itself, reminding us that nothing needs to be invented, only revealed. In hearing this tale, it is not merely about appreciating a metaphor, but about recognizing yourself in it. Because within each of us exists this same block of stone and this same silent sculptor. Life, in its infinite patience, continues removing the excess until the true form appears. Perhaps that is why so many cultures speak of initiations, rites of passage, symbolic trials. They do not exist to add power to the individual, but to remove the masks that keep them from seeing their own light. The ritual does not create essence, it only exposes it. And if now you find yourself weary of seeking ready-made answers, perhaps it is a sign that the sculpture has already begun to reveal itself. Spiritual essence does not need you to become something different. It only awaits the moment when you accept being stripped of what is not yours. The craftsman's tale reveals that essence is not created, only revealed. But understanding this intellectually is still not enough. It must be felt in the body, experienced in the heart, allowed to become concrete living. Because true spirituality does not happen only in words, but in breathing, in the silence between heartbeats, in the way we open ourselves to the present moment. To begin, find a comfortable posture. It does not need to be rigid or formal. Allow the body to find a point of rest, where it is not necessary to uphold masks or appearances. Gently close your eyes and bring your attention inward, as one returning to a home that has always been waiting for you. Feel the breath, There is no need to control it, only to follow its natural flow. Each intake of air brings with it the memory of all that sustains life: trees, oceans, distant winds. Each exhalation carries away what has already fulfilled its role. Notice that you are traversed by this cosmic movement, made of giving and receiving. Now direct your attention to the chest area. There visualize not a defined form, but a point of gentle warmth, like an ember protected by the hands of existence. This warmth does not need your intervention. It is already lit. Simply perceive its presence. With each breath, allow this ember to become more visible to your perception. Feel it gradually expanding, radiating a warmth that reaches shoulders, arms, abdomen, legs, until it envelops the whole body. It is as if the inner flame, discreet yet constant, illuminated the accumulated shadows and dissolved the excess. Remain in this state for a few moments. If thoughts arise, do not fight against them. Simply let them approach this light and be touched by it. The fire of essence does not burn to destroy but to transform. Notice how even restlessness can soften in the face of this silent presence. Now, carry this same perception beyond the body. Imagine that this flame has no limits, that it expands into the surrounding space, connecting with everything that exists. People, places, memories, even challenges, all are enveloped by this vibration. In this field, there is no separation between you and the world. There is only a single presence expressed in infinite forms. Allow yourself to remain in this state of communion for a few moments, as one who rests in calm waters. Feel the body being supported, the mind opening, the heart breathing. Spiritual essence is not an object to be reached, but the foundation sustaining all experience. When you feel it is time to return, gently bring your attention back to the body. Notice the points of contact with the floor or with the chair. Listen to the sounds around you. Take a deep breath once more and open your eyes gently, without hurry. This exercise is not just an isolated technique. It is a reminder. Each time you allow yourself to enter this space of perception, you are removing a new layer of excess. You are training the gaze to perceive, within the block of stone, the hidden sculpture. What matters most is not the duration of the practice, but the quality of surrender. Even a few minutes may be enough to remember that essence is already vibrating within you. Constancy is not measured by chronological time, but by the intensity of recognition. With repetition, something changes subtly yet irreversibly. The world ceases to be seen only as an external stage and begins to be perceived as an extension of this same presence. The other is no longer just the other, but an expression of the same field pulsing in you. Life ceases to be an incessant search and becomes a celebration of what already is. This experience does not require complex beliefs nor additional symbols. It only requires availability. Only the simple gesture of closing your eyes, breathing, and recognizing. And each time this happens, the inner fire gains more clarity until it becomes impossible to ignore it. At its core, this practice is only an invitation to stop running and allow yourself to feel. Because spiritual essence does not need to be reached. It only waits for you to make space for its presence to be perceived. Upon returning from the practice, something remains. It is not just a passing sensation, but a memory imprinted in the body. The perception that spiritual essence does not need to be sought outside, because it already pulses within. What once seemed distant reveals itself as near. What seemed hidden shows itself as simple. And in this recognition, everything takes on new color. The steps of daily life cease to be mechanical and begin to carry resonance. The gesture of looking someone in the eyes becomes profound, because you no longer see just a person, but the same flame vibrating in you. Even moments of silence gain density, as if inhabited by an invisible presence. Life as a whole comes to be perceived as a work in motion, where the sculptor and the sculpture are at their core the same thing. It is at this point that the journey ceases to be about conquering something and becomes about allowing the excess to fall away, allowing the flame to shine, allowing the real essence to manifest effortlessly. This permission is the simplest gesture, and at the same time, the most revolutionary. Do not conclude. Breathe. Let this video continue within you as reverberation that does not depend on words. Perhaps the answer you seek does not come in phrases, but in silent vibrations that begin to move even now. And if you have come this far, write in the comments, "I recognize the essence in me." This way I will know you have walked the whole path. Also take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel if you wish to receive more content like this and keep this flame alive within you.